Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to GRCI Law IT Governance Flash Briefing on how to handle a data breach. We've got three people on the panel today, and firstly, a few apologies. Well, a few housekeeping points. You'll be muted during the session. Please submit your questions as you think of them, and we'll try and address those if we've got time at the end. If not, we'll certainly get back to you. And just for confirmation, we'll email you a copy of the presentation slides and the recording once we've finished. Apologies for the lack of webcam. It would appear that there's a fault with the webinar system and we can't actually do our webcams, so our apologies for that. Okay, a couple of introductions. I'm John Potts and I'm the Operations Director at GRCI Law. I've been with the company for just coming up for 3 years now. And prior to that, I was the head of information law and security at the Met Police. I head up, as I say, the whole of the operations team covering DSARS, DPR as a service, privacy as a service, legal, and now the cyber incident response team, headed up by Cliff. So over to yourself, Cliff.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's well who's dialed in. My name is Cliff Martin. I'm the cyber incident responder working for John. So I recently moved into the GRCI Law team. Previously, I was part of the wider IT governance and I started with the organisation back in April this year. Prior to that, I worked in the defence sector, specifically in cybersecurity. I'll pass you on to Martin now.
Hello, my name is Martin and I'm a data protection consultant with DQM GRC. So they're one of the organisations that sit underneath the GRCI banner. Day to day, I get involved in doing gap analysis for organisations, managing day-to-day support with businesses to help them implement action plans that we've set out for them. And yeah, just providing support really.
Thanks, Martin. Okay, about us then. I think hopefully most of you are familiar now with IT Governance Limited. We're a subsidiary of the group. IT Governance is a cyber security and privacy risk management solutions provider, and GRCI Law sits under that group banner. GRCI Law, legal risk and compliance consultancy firm, and we advise clients on all data protection, data privacy, cyber and information security law. We've been involved now for about 3 years as part of the group, and I've got quite a stable and portfolio of clients across all three sectors. So we also have a legal team that will cover all of your legal data protection, data privacy, cookies, that kind of question that we've got going on there. So that's GRCI Law. We're whipping through these a little bit. It's only 20 minutes, but obviously you get the slides. If you've got any questions about us, please do so. Martin, would you like to say a few words about DQM?
Yeah, so DQM are a data consultancy. They've been part of GRCI for about the last 3 years or so. As mentioned, we do, well, in relation to the theme of this seminar, it's all kind of data protection work. But as well as that, we also do data seeding for organisations.
Thanks, Martin. Okay, today's briefing then, in 3 parts. I don't know what happened to number 2, but we're in 3 parts. We're going to give examples of what constitutes a data breach regarding UK and EU residents' data under the GDPR. What steps you should take following the discovery of a data breach, including engagement of our cyber incident response team, and what help is out there. Finishing up with what help is available out there and how GRCI Law and DQM can assist you in the event of a data breach. So, without further ado, as they say, over to you, Martin.
Okay, thank you very much. Yep, so I'm just going to start by talking about what would constitute a personal data breach and go through a couple of examples of what that actually means in practice. The first thing that I did want to bring up is just some statistics that really put this into context over the last this kind of quite turbulent 18 months that we've had. So you can see there that there is a large number of ransomware attacks that do happen across the organisation. These are particularly harmful to businesses in terms of disruption to business activities if data can't be accessed or if services can't be provided to customers and other stakeholders. But in spite of that, there are only 31% of organisations that have a business continuity plan that covers these issues at the moment. So this is particularly an issue for kind of often small, medium enterprises that might not necessarily have considered this as deeply in the past, but having a continuity plan in place can just help in terms of making sure that an organisation knows how it's going to respond to an incident rather than having to develop their response in a live situation. And as you can see there in that third stat for Mimecast, I think this does just show what's been happening over this last 18 months, really, is that there is this rise in threat volume that's been coming from the pandemic. And a large chunk of that is the move to home working that we've seen over the last 18 months or so. But I think it also just comes back to events. They do get exploited. So I think when this pandemic does eventually pass, when we're moving back into the offices, there are going to be other events that happen in the future that will result in those spikes, and just kind of keeping an understanding of the threat landscape can be really handy with that. And yeah, finally, following on from the statistic I talked about a little earlier, businesses with cybersecurity policies that cover home working, there's only 25% of organisations that have that. And again, it sort of comes back to being able to understand the threat landscape and put plans into place, really. Okay, so I'm going to talk now about what actually constitutes a breach. Can I have the next slide, please? Can I have the next slide?
No, I'm changing slides, Martin. You should have what constitutes a data breach.
Oh, okay. It's not come up on mine. Okay. Well, yeah. I'll go through it. I've got my notes. Yeah. So as you can see on that slide, there is an ICO definition for what constitutes a data breach, and that can be really quite well. The definition is fairly broad and can cover just a lot of areas that an organisation needs to consider as part of a risk assessment that they're undertaking. I mean, in terms of practical steps, well, practical incidents that could happen within an organisation, I've just picked out a couple there that, I see happen fairly often at organisations. So unauthorised access to data by external individuals, and I think that comes back to that Mimecast statistic that I talked about a moment ago, and just the increase in these kind of social engineering attacks that potentially take place against organisations. You might also see inappropriate viewing of data by current members of staff. So the issue that arises there is often a lack of access controls within a business, which means that people can perhaps see things that they ought not to see. There is also sending personal data to incorrect recipients. We saw this in particular last week with the incident with the Ministry of Defence. So for anyone who might have missed that story, what happened was the Ministry of Defence were sending out a group email to individuals who are still in Afghanistan who were looking for support to leave the country. And the way that it was sent out meant that individuals could be identified as recipients of that, which, I mean, it's pretty rare in this line of work that we do talk about potentially life or death issues, but yeah, that certainly does come under that. Theft of devices is, again, particularly in the context of the last 18 months with people working from home. Often, as was mentioned on the previous slide, there will not be a lot of policies in place around home working. So you might see either devices that don't have appropriate password controls, or an organisation might not be able to wipe devices remotely. So there are potential issues that arise from that. In terms of alteration of personal data, it's looking at if the information held on an individual isn't accurate, it can result in a service being provided to that individual that they're not supposed to have, or decisions being made that aren't appropriate to that person. And finally, in terms of loss of availability, this kind of goes back to that statistic I was talking about on ransomware attacks. So 60 odd% of organisations have had a ransomware attack against them. And if that happens, then there is this risk of having what, in some circumstances, can be quite a distressing service outage for customers. You know, particularly if it is a service that really links back to the health and well-being of individuals. So I think those just give some practical examples really about what that ICO quote above is really getting at with this, and what you do see happen within organisations. So I'll pass over to Cliff Martin now.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. So now we've just been through a couple of examples of what constitutes a breach. What I want to do now is just talk through some of the steps that you should take following the discovery of a data breach within your organization. So just moving on to the next slide then. So the first part is don't panic. You know, we understand that it's going to be a very stressful time, and that anyone who is involved in the data breach is going to be very distressed at this point. You need to have a calm and structured approach when it comes to incident response. Obviously, this is something that we can help with when it comes to responding to this data breach. So the key steps when responding. So obviously you've identified that something has happened, and you need to now act quickly in order to contain the incident. So this means that where the data is held, you need to understand and then restrict further compromise when it comes to the system in question. So after that, we need to then assess the issue and the impact that it's had on the organization. And this includes, well, what data has been breached, where has the data been breached from, any investigations that need to be ongoing. Now, this can include conducting some form of forensic assessment where you're taking an image of the assets and then you're trying to understand the root cause when it comes to what actually happened during the breach. How was this data released? Obviously, when it comes to a data breach, there is instances where it does need to be reported to the supervisory authority, depending on where you are located. So obviously in the UK, that will be the ICO, and you've obviously got 72 hours from the time when you do identify that you've had a breach. Now that initially could be just a confirmation to the ICO that something has happened, and then you can then back that up with your investigation as it's ongoing. And I'm sure the ICO will have various questions depending on how that investigation goes. And then the final stage is, you know, what can we learn from this experience? Obviously it's happened and it's really bad, but going forward, what can you do differently? And hopefully this then feeds into your policies and procedures. And Martin mentioned before about the lack of procedures that some organisations have, that does include this home working aspect. So those lessons need to be fed back into the process in terms of how you do respond to a breach later on. So following that, so you've had a breach and you just need help. You don't have the capability, you just don't have the resources at the time to deal with this. What can you do? Well, obviously we at GRCI Law and IT governance and the group is here to help if you need it, but generally don't be ashamed of asking for help. You know, if you have suffered a data breach, you know, a lot of people tend to shy away when it comes to cybersecurity, and we don't like talking about it, which is actually wrong. We should be talking about this and getting our lessons learned out into the wider community so that people aren't falling for the same tricks across different organizations. The next one there, so it is crucial that any external incident response team is brought up to speed as quickly as possible. So you do have a breach. Remember, if you are bringing in an external third party, they might not necessarily understand your organization, you know, what systems talk to what, where this data will be located. So it's key that if you do engage with an external third party, you bring them up to speed, you provide them with the documentation, but also the capabilities that they can then interact with those systems in question. Now that could be getting hands-on to the equipment, it can be engaging with your technical teams to understand, well, what has actually happened. It could vary depending on the type of breach that you've suffered. Now I'll pass you on to John for the next bit.
Thanks, Cliff. Just very quickly, cover it in the last 5 minutes really. I'm going to talk about what help is available and how GRCI law and DQM can actually do to assist you. Now, when Martin spoke earlier, talking about don't panic, that's very easy to say don't panic, but at 4:45 on a Friday, as we all know, that's when breaches tend to occur, when IT poke their head around the office and ask you, have we got a minute just to talk about something that may be a breach? It's quite difficult to keep focus on that. That's where hopefully GRCI law can come into play and assist you with that, with the offerings that we've got, with the services that we've got. If you take nothing else away from this other than our phone number on a post-it and stick it on your computer, then we've achieved something. Help is out there, believe you me. Now, I'm not saying that this is the kind of help that we can send you, but we can help. Although my daughter keeps telling me that this is the kind of help that we should be sending. Okay, what have we got within GRCI law? We've got our retained breach service. Now, the thing about the breach service is the retained service. This is for people that aren't already our clients. This means that you are already registered with us. We know your business. You've got an emergency contact number. You can dial us on. As soon as you hit that helpline, we know who you are. We know the business, and we can get up and running and give you that help to start reporting the breach, sorting out whether it is a breach, whether it needs reporting, what to do, whether we need to inform the ICO or other supervisory authorities, other regulatory bodies, the NHS, the Care Quality Commission, depending on what sector you're in, charities, etc. So that's our retained, that's our retained service. We've also got the emergency breach service, and this is the telephone number stuck on the on your post-it, stuck on there. You can dial in on our dedicated breach line. You'll get one of my team, or the breach team. The difference between this and the retained is that we've got to set you up as a customer before we can deal with it, obviously before we can give any advice, because we can't give advice until you are our customer. So that's why we're covered by insurance, etc., etc. The other two services which we're really excited about at the moment, and this is the crux of this briefing really, is that we've now got the cyber incident response. And again, we've got the two on these. We've got the retainer, and the joy of the retainer that we've got here is that it means that you're already signed up with us. There are things that Martin and his team will do to assist you on this. So they'll come and do a tabletop exercise, you get a post-incident review once they've done it. It really is a cyber incident response readiness assessment. As I say, something that I'm personally really excited about that we've got on board now. So that's our retainer. You pay for that service up front, and then you get Martin coming in and hopefully looking at things and telling you why they're not going to go wrong with a tabletop exercise. Both this and the emergency support that we offer, very similar again to the emergency breach service, where you dial in, you get one of Martin's team, Martin or one of his team, and they will triage and take it from there. Within both of these, you get the breach response team as well. So as well as having Martin's team looking at the cyber incident side, looking how that's going, we've got the breach team working in parallel with them, reporting to the ICO if need be, taking care of correspondence with the ICO, helping you to contact the data subjects, the affected data subjects. So you've got a really good package containing both of services, whether it's the retainer service or it's the emergency response, and that's on the cyber incident or on the 2 breach services. Okay, we've also got the breach audit team, which is from Martin's side, from DQM. So this is once you've had the breach. This is again part of the service. Once you've had the breach, Martin's team will come in, have a look at the circumstances surrounding the breach, enabling you to deal with the data, with the breach effectively and within the confines of the GDPR. You know, all too often we fill out the breach response form, report form to the ICO, and actually what we do is compound matters, make things worse by actually putting on too much information on there. Okay, I'm very conscious of time now, folks. So these are our privacy manager services that we've got, that we've talked about. They'll all be on the slides. We've got the retained data breach management service, the cyber incident response, data breach audit, the emergency data breach, and again, the cyber incident response emergency support side on there. Okay. This is how to get in touch with us. As I say, we'll have it all out there. If you need anything, you want to talk, please give us a ring. We've got an expert on hand and we can talk in general terms to you. Or if you want us to come and scope, then again, please give us a ring. We can scope what it is that you've got. Okay, I think the only question that I can see is the 72 hours reporting across the whole of the EU? No, it's not limited across the EU. It's not always 72 hours. Some supervisory authorities don't need a report. Some it is the 72, but that's the kind of thing that we are horizon scanning and monitoring all the time. So can't see any other questions. And having said that, we're 2 minutes over. Martin, do you have anything else you'd like to add just before we finish?
Not at this moment, really. I mean, I'd just say the main point from my side of things is making sure that those plans are being put in place so that you're not having to respond to this in a live situation whilst building a plan.
Thanks, Martin. Cliff, anything from your side just before we close?
Nothing specific, but we have had a question from David, which I think you might be able to answer, John. Everything that you have referred to, the ICO, what level of service is available from you in the Republic of Ireland?
Yeah, exactly the same. We can do the reporting to the Irish regulators as well. Yeah, we talked about the ICO, but of course it's yeah, we can certainly handle the and have been doing this week. We've dealt with a breach, in fact, an ongoing breach in the Republic of Ireland.
Okay.
Okay. Don't think there's any more questions there that we can pick up on. Any more questions that we do have that we can answer, we'll get out to the questionnaire, and as I say, we'll get the slides out with the recording. So thank you all very much for your time and your forbearance and patience with us because of the webinars, etc. Thank you.